is a minor request that both sides will probably agree to. It's not worth fighting over when you're fighting over so many other important things. However, once you've settled, there's no reason why they should, if you ask your ex to come with you to the Beth Din, there's no reason they should say yes, especially if they don't like you that much anymore. And that becomes a big problem. So it's really important before finalizing the settlement, before you finalize anything, make sure you go to the Beth Din, get the divorce before anything is finalized. Do it earlier. The earlier in the process, the better.
But then you still need to go to a regular court divorce.
You need, regardless, in today's law, you need regardless to file for a divorce in a civil court. That's the law today. So you need to do that. You can't just do the Jewish. No, that's illegal. You need to file civilly as well. However, ideally, you should do your settlement in a Jewish court. If you choose not to do your settlement in a Jewish court, and most Jews choose not to do it, then you should make sure that you do the Jewish divorce prior to settling. Do it before settling, because once you settle, it's going to be very, very hard to convince your spouse to do it. And if you don't get it, it's a big problem. You can't remarry again. And unfortunately, from what I've seen, most cases of get refusals, which we once did a class on get refusals and the aguna issue, most cases of get refusals where one of the spouses refused to cooperate comes from a dispute comes because they failed to settle the court. They failed to do the Jewish divorce prior to settling the case. So again, I would strongly encourage doing the divorce earlier. Now, you cannot do the divorce when you're still living together. You cannot be living together while you do a Jewish divorce. A Jewish divorce, if you're living together in the same house, even if you don't sleep in the same bedroom, but if you're living in the same house while you do the Jewish divorce, just the fact that you're living together will invalidate the divorce. So you must be living separately already. You must have already separated in order to do the Jewish divorce. So I'm going to try to now describe the actual ceremony. As I mentioned, I think it's one of the most detailed and complex Jewish ceremonies that we do. And as I mentioned before, I'm no expert in Jewish divorce. I've done some training. I've seen some handful of divorces, but I certainly don't do divorces regularly. So the first thing the couple will do is they'll set a date for the Jewish divorce, the get. Usually, the court will tell you to allow 2 to 3 hours for the get. It's not a quick process. It takes some time. They might tell you to allocate all morning or all afternoon for the divorce. We generally, except in emergencies, don't do divorces at night. Generally, both the husband and the wife need to be there in person at the divorce. If they cannot both come at the same time or they're not in the same place, there's a workaround, which I will get to soon. But generally, they both need to be there. So they need to submit documentation. Firstly, they need to prove who they are. Once upon a time, the way we did that was that actually have to, if they don't know the judges personally, that have to bring witnesses to the court that testify that they know this individual and this is their correct name. Today, we have legal ID that essentially does the same thing. You bring your legal ID, can document who you are. We need to make sure that you're actually writing a divorce and you're really the who you say you are. They then must submit not only their legal names, but their Jewish names, their father's Jewish names, as well as any name that they are generally called. So any nickname that they go by, even if it's just a couple friends or one friend that calls them a particular nickname, it is all included in the get. And I've seen some divorces with some very strange nicknames that people get called, and we'll put them all in the divorce document. There's usually a fee involved. I think it's usually a couple $100. Nothing outrageous, not close to what you're paying the lawyers if you're getting divorced. But there's usually a filing fee which covers the cost of the people who are involved.
Are you allowed to bring an attorney to the church?
You could bring an attorney for the negotiations. For the actual ceremony, there's no need for an attorney. It's pretty straightforward. You don't need an attorney for that. People often will bring a friend for support or a relative for support, for personal support. But no, you don't need to bring an attorney. There's nothing to haggle. It's a very straightforward ceremony. You just perform the ceremony. Okay, so the Beth Din itself will include 3 rabbis who sit as judges on the Beth Din, as well as a sofer, a scribe, who will actually write the document. It's a legal document that needs to be written by a sofer, the same kind of person that writes the Torah scrolls or the tefillin or the mezuzahs, write divorce documents as well. Sometimes one of the rabbis will double as a sofer. That's okay. There are also going to be 2 witnesses hired by the court, in addition to the 3 judges and the sofer, who are Jewish observant men that are not related to each other, not related to the couple at all, and not related to any of the 3 judges. So no one can be related, even second or third cousins. So the divorce begins with the Beth Din, the witnesses, the 3 members of the Beth Din, the 2 witnesses, the sofer, the scribe, and the husband sit around the table. And because there's a lot of things to recite, what they'll usually do is they'll actually give you a booklet that has every person's role. This person says this person says that, and then everyone plays their role, because there's quite a lot of talking done and everyone needs to say the right things. Okay, so the first thing is that the law is that the divorce cannot be done by the husband if he made a vow that he will divorce his wife. If he vowed that he will divorce his wife, then that invalidates the divorce. So we have a thing in Jewish law called annulment of vows, hatarat nedarim. We once had a class dedicated to that as well. So the first thing that he does is the husband turns to the Beth Din, the court has the right to annul vows, and says, if I made a vow if I made a vow to give my wife a divorce, I ask that the vow be annulled. Then, if he made a vow not to give the divorce, then the divorce would be in violation with the vow. So he asks the Beth Din to annul any vow he may have made not to give the divorce. Then he must state that he is giving the husband states that he is giving the divorce on his own free will, and he is not being forced to do so. If a husband is forced to give a divorce, the divorce is invalid. They must then make the husband must say that any declaration that he may have made to annul the divorce in advance. You can write a contract, but in advance write an earlier contract, saying that the future contract I'm about to write is invalid. And so you want to make sure the husband didn't do that, and so he annuls any earlier declarations he may have made to annul the divorce, and further declares that he considers any witnesses of such a declaration to be invalid.
Can you annul a marriage?
You cannot annul marriage. You can annul a divorce in advance by stating, or you can annul a contract in advance by saying that what I'm about to do should not be valid, if you do it in front of witnesses under Jewish law.
What if the woman wants a divorce, but the man doesn't say what happens?
Very good question. What if the woman wants a divorce and the man does not want a divorce? It's a problem. It has to be from his own free will. We did a class once on the issue of if one of the sides are not cooperative. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to touch on it briefly very soon. But let's continue with the ceremony. In Ashkenazi communities, the woman is then asked if she is receiving the divorce on her own free will, and she says that she is. The husband then needs to own the parchment that the get will be written on, the ink will be written with, as well as the quill or the writing material that the sofer will use. So what happens is the sofer then picks up his bag that has all of his equipment, and the Beth Din then turns to the sofer and says, "Is all of this yours?" And the sofer says, yes, it is mine. And then the sofer takes the bag and gifts it to the husband as a gift. The husband then takes the bag and then he gives it back to the sofer. It's now his bag. And he says, I'm asking you to take this parchment and ink and quill and use it to write a get for my wife by this and this name. It should be done for me to divorce my wife, and mention their names. So then the husband turns to the witnesses and designates the witnesses as witnesses to witness the writing of the divorce document and sign the divorce document. The divorce document is then written in letters similar to the way we write Torah scrolls, right? Or tefillin or mezuzahs, a special where each letter has a very particular shape. It's written on parchment, the same kind of parchment that we use for Torah scrolls, with the same kind of ink. And the get cannot have any mistakes. In order to make sure that the get does not have a mistake, what the Beth Din will do is they will first write out a draft, usually pen on paper. They'll write a draft of the document of exactly what it should say, and then the sofer will copy, the scribe will copy the draft, so he's copying word for word, letter for letter, that the Beth Din wrote. The get itself is written in 12 lines. It's primarily written in Aramaic, and that's the way we've been doing it since the days of the Talmud. Each letter must be spelled correctly. There's an exact spelling, an exact shape for each letter. Each letter must be written correctly. Now, the template of the get, the template of this document is pretty standard, and it's used universally, the same template in all Jewish communities. The variations, though, are in the date. The date will change depending on the date of your get. You have to write the date, the place where you are writing the get, and the names of the husband and wife involved. So the date that is written is always going to be the Jewish date, the day, the month, the year. Each day must be spelled correctly. There's particular rules, how we write the day, how we write the month, how we write the year. Then the place where the get is written must be spelled correctly. Now, if you are writing a get outside of the land of Israel, then the name of the place that you live is not a Hebrew name. It's a name in whichever language you live in. So we have a somewhat complex system to correctly transliterate the name of any place into the Hebrew language. Now, it's important to note the spelling rules, how to spell it correctly is very different from the way things are spelled today in modern Hebrew. So in modern Hebrew, you want to write something, you have all different ways to spell it. The modern Hebrew ways of spelling English or French or whatever other words is very different from the way we spell things in a get, in a divorce document. And it's important to know, the person or the Beth Din needs to know, one of the things they really need to learn is how to correctly write the names of places, and as we'll see, people that are not Hebrew, and how to spell them correctly. There are different spelling rules between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. We pronounce things differently, and so we also have spelling rules that evolve differently over the years. We have different rules for Ashkenazim and Sephardim. If a city has multiple names, some cities do have multiple names, we write the additional names that it's known by as well. We also, in addition to writing the city itself, we also write the name of the city, the name of the river that the city sits on. So in ancient times, most cities were next to rivers, and so you write the name of the city to identify what city it is. Today, we identify different cities based on which state they're in. So I think like Rochester is in every single state almost, but there's a couple other names of cities that are in many different states, but we identify it by the state. But historically, cities were identified by the river they were on. For example, in Germany, there's Frankfurt am Main and Frankfurt am Oder, right? Frankfurt on the Main and Frankfurt on the Oder, right? They're known by the names of the rivers they are on. So that's also the way we did it historically in Judaism. We always had to know the name of the river. So, for example, if someone is writing a get in Los Angeles, they would write Los Angeles, Masa, the city of Los Angeles, the Yatfa al Nahar Los Angeles, that sits on the Los Angeles River, which is the primary river in this city. Cities that have more than one main river will write the name of both rivers or more that they have in their city. A city that has no river writes either the Yasfa al Mei Ba'oros, it sits on wells, if the water comes from the water table from underground, or the Yasfa al Mei Mayanos, that it sits on springs, if it's oasis that has springs that supply the water supply. So wherever the water supply comes from, that's what you add that to the place of the get as well. Now, because of the complexity of writing the name of the place and spelling it correctly, and if there's a mistake, you have a problem with a divorce. So usually the first Beth Din established in any city establishes the correct way to write that city. And usually, often they'll consult with experts, Jewish experts, in how to write the name of the city. And once the correct way to write the name of the city is established, that is generally the way that's used, and everyone, essentially all subsequent Beth Dins, write it in the same way. And for that reason, Beth Dins generally avoid going to new cities where there's no established way yet to write the place, because it's a big process to establish how to correctly write the place in a get. So I don't know if there was ever a get written, for example, in Redondo Beach. I don't think so. And the Beth Din will not come to Redondo Beach to do a get, but they will sit in Los Angeles and do it, where there's already a long history of writing get and writing divorce documents over there. Now, just as we have rules for the name of the place, the same is also for the correct spelling of the names of the husband, the wife, and their fathers. So we write the name of the husband, Ben, and we write his father's name. The wife and her father's name, those names must be spelled correctly. We also required to write any legal names or any nicknames that they use. If it's a name they had many years ago but don't use it anymore, it does not need to be included. But any nickname that they are known by to anyone, they must include it in the get. And often you'll see in a get multiple nicknames added to the get. If someone has different friends that call them by different names, they will be added to the get as well. Now, because of the difficulty of correctly spelling, for example, English names or French names for Jews living in French-speaking countries, or Italian names for Jews living in Italian-speaking countries and the like, because of that complexity, there are many, many books that have been written about the rules of how to correctly spell names, along with examples of names. And often they'll include hundreds or thousands of names that people have, and there's kind of collections of names and nicknames that people have, and give you the correct spelling of every name. Today, the Israeli rabbinate, the chief rabbinate of Israel, actually maintains a database of names for gittin, for divorces, together with the correct way to spell them, and in names that, of course, in like many things in Jewish law, there are differences of opinion. When there are differences of opinion, it will give you the different opinions and the sources of how to spell any particular name. So because the date, the place, the names must all be spelled correctly, even though most of the get is there's a standard template, but because those things change and must be spelled correctly, that's why the Beth Din will first decide how to spell each thing and what to write and what to include and what not to include, and they create a draft, and then the sofer, the scribe, will then copy from that draft. So the get itself, the document itself, is 12 lines, plus one line on the bottom for the witnesses to sign. Now, the get is written in what we call in formatting justified, where you have the lines all start at the same place. Firstly, the lines have to be straight. So as you'll see in a Torah scroll, the scribe will actually etch in with a scalpel, etch in lines into the parchment with a scalpel and a ruler in advance of writing, and also etch in horizontal lines, 12 plus a 13th for the witnesses, and also etch in 2 vertical lines on either side to know where to begin and end the where to begin and end the writing. Now, in order to write the document in a way that you start at the beginning of the line and in a particular spot and end that line in the same spot, what the sofer actually has to do is count the number of letters and spaces on the line, and then write based on those numbers of letters and spaces. So if there are 50 letters on the line, then he writes one size width letter. If there are 60 letters on the line, he has to make them a little narrower. If there are 40 letters on the line, he'd make them wider, right? So you count the number of letters, and that's how he makes sure that they are all, that the lines are all straight. The last line of the 12 lines has just 3 words in it, Kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, which is the final words of the get, like the law of Moses and Israel. And those 3 words, it's only 3 words, are spread out, each letter written very, very widely. So it spreads out across the entire line, starting at the beginning of the line and ending at the end of the line. When the sofer finishes writing, depending on the expertise of the sofer, it could take a half hour, an hour for him to write the get. Everybody else just sits around. We don't let the husband or wife go anywhere. They must stay put. But everyone sits and waits. And then when the witnesses must watch the sofer writing the get. They stand there and watch him. The husband doesn't, and wife and Beth do not have to be there. When the sofer finishes, they then wait for the ink to dry. Today they'll usually use a fan to help the ink dry faster because it's just downtime, waiting time. Once the ink dries, which could be a couple minutes, then the witnesses both read the document, and then each witness signs their name at the bottom of the document, one on either side with a space in between. They write their name, their father's name, and the word ed, witness, at the end. They must write it in the Torah letters, the same letters that we use to write the Torah, with a quill. So the witnesses, even if they're not professional sofers, which they're usually not, but they have to have trained to know how to at least write their names in the Torah letters with a quill. And then as they write, they both sign in front of each other. Then, once the signatures are dry, the Bethtin returns, the husband and wife both come in as well. Now, the witnesses then both each read over the entire get together with the signatures. Then the Bethtin reads, each member of the Bethtin then reads the entire get together with the signatures, each one making sure that everything in the get is correct. The Bethtin then turns to the sofer and says, "Did you write this?" And he says, "Yes." They say, "Did the husband command you to write this for his sake, to divorce with," and they say his name, "to divorce his wife," and they say her name. And the sofer says, "Yes." Then they turn to the witnesses. And they say, "Did the husband command the sofer to write? Did you see the husband command the sofer to write the get to divorce his wife, giving his name and her name, the name of the husband and wife?" And the witnesses must both say yes. They then say, "Did you see him write it?" And the witnesses must then say yes. They then must ask, "Do you recognize this get as the document that he wrote?" And they must say yes. They then ask the witnesses, "Did you sign this?" And they must both say yes. And they ask them, "Do you recognize your signature?" And they must look at it and say yes. Then they ask each witness, "Did you see the other witness?" And each witness is done but one by one. "Did you see the other witness sign it?" And the witness must say yes. "Do you recognize the other witness's signature?" And the witness must say yes. Then they take the document and they fold it. There's a particular way that we fold the document. And then the husband and wife both stand up in front of each other. The husband holds the divorce document in his right hand. The wife then cups her hands together, puts both her hands together flat. And then the husband, before they do that, the husband and wife both must take off their rings or anything on their hands. So there is nothing separating their hands from the divorce document. The husband then says to his soon to be former wife, this is your get, this is your divorce document, hareze gitech, and with it you will be divorced from me and permitted to marry any person, vareyat muteres l'chol adam. And then he gently drops the get into her open hands while the Beth Din and the witnesses see it. It's very important that her hands are open, because if she takes it from him, then the divorce is invalid. He must give it to her. So we must see him drop it into her hands. The woman then picks up the document, holds the document in her hand, and then walks away with it, walks to the door with it. Then she turns around, comes back in the room, because they're not yet done. And then she gives the get back to one of the members of the Beth Din, one of the members of the court. They then open it again. They then read the get again, and then they declare a cherem or ban on anyone who questions the validity of this get, of this divorce document. We don't want anyone questioning whether the divorce is valid. They then take a knife and they cut the document in a cross shape, an X shape into the document. And then the Beth Din then files the divorce document in their own files. They hold on to it while for future reference, and while the husband and wife are given documents from the court saying that this and this person by this and this name divorced their wife by this and this name on this and this date in the court, and it was a kosher divorce. So that is, in very brief, the ceremony. As you can see, it is very tedious, very detailed, and there's a lot of details in it. I hope I covered just about everything. It takes some time, including the writing of the get, the waiting for it to dry. It could take 2 to 3 hours, so it's time consuming. It's not something, a quick thing that takes a few minutes, but that is the process of doing a get. Now, in event that the couple live in different places, or they're not able to come at the same time, or I once witnessed such a get, they don't want to see each other, then there is a way to do it with a agent to have an agent deliver the divorce document to the wife. And essentially you'd go through the same process, except instead of the husband giving the get to his wife, instead he hands the get to the agent, and the agent must witness the entire thing, witness it being written, witness it being signed, and then he hands the document to the agent, and he says, "You are my agent with this document, you will divorce my wife." Then the agent could then fly to wherever it is that the wife lives, or show up if the wife is going to come on a different day, or if the wife is just sitting in the other room because she doesn't want to look at him, he could go out and then the wife can come in, and then he will then hand the document in the same way to the woman. She holds her hand open. He holds his right hand up with the divorce document. Same thing, says, "This is your divorce document. You are divorced from so-and-so, and you are now permitted to any person." After a couple get divorced, they are now totally divorced under Jewish law. They have no relationship whatsoever anymore. They may no longer live together. They may no longer even touch each other, like the law of a Jewish man and woman who must be who are forbidden under Jewish law to even touch. The woman is forbidden from marrying for 90 days after the get was given. She must wait 90 days. That is in order to, just in case she may be pregnant from her husband. She marries and you don't know who the real father is. Before they had pregnancy tests. There's some debate whether a pregnancy test whether she could get around the 90 days if she has a pregnancy test. But generally, even a woman who's not of age to have children, she's not able, she's already post-menopause, still has to wait 90 days. It's a standard rule that the woman always waits 90 days to get divorced. Now,
if she is pregnant, does that make
if she's pregnant, divorce is still valid.
so that's all?
That doesn't change the divorce, no.
That's obviously the actual.
Now, unfortunately, and some of you brought this up already, unfortunately, it is common for people not to want to do the get. sometimes the husband, sometimes the wife. And we previously did a class dedicated to this particular topic. What do you do if one of the two sides are not cooperative? Sometimes this happens over disagreements on how to settle the outstanding issues. And then the solution is, if you do it early on in the settlement, you don't have that problem. They failed to do so, and because of the disputes now that they're having, they don't want to cooperate with the get. More often it happens because neither side made an effort to do the get during the divorce proceedings. And later on, the spouse has no reason to be cooperative with their ex now that their ex wants a divorce. And that's especially true if they know that their ex would like to remarry. And especially true if they know their ex is already engaged and planning to remarry, and now they have a leash that they can hold them back from remarrying by refusing to participate in the get. So that's a big problem. We cannot force someone to do a divorce. If the woman refuses, there are some difficult halachic workarounds. If the man refuses, there's really no halachic workaround. But generally, we need to do everything we can to convince the couple to try to do a get. And I think the most important thing is that do it as soon as possible. As soon as you file for divorce, file with the Beth Din and set a date for a Jewish divorce. If you've already filed for divorce, go to the Beth Din as soon as possible and set a date for a Jewish divorce. If you've been divorced many, many years ago and never did your Jewish divorce, never did your get, but you have no plan to ever remarry, go do a Jewish divorce today. Go today, file with a Beth Din. I've been happy to direct you. And make sure you get that Jewish divorce, because getting it when you need it, when you're desperate, is very difficult. Unfortunately, I have been involved in a number of such cases of couples that were engaged to get married, and they could not get married because their ex would not cooperate with the divorce. It becomes a real problem. Sometimes they have to pay them off. Sometimes they have to pay them off significantly. You don't want to be in that situation, so don't wait till you're desperate. The earlier you do it, the better. And remember, you're connected to the soul of the person whom you are married to until you get the divorce. Your souls are still combined until you get the divorce. If you don't like them anymore, and you don't want to be connected to them, and you don't want your souls to be connected to them, and you don't want to be married to them in heaven, in the next world, make sure you get the divorce as soon as possible. And I think it's a big mitzvah to encourage those who are. I think it's a big mitzvah to encourage those who are divorced from their Jewish spouse and didn't do the Jewish divorce to do the get as soon as possible. Or if you know someone going through a divorce, encourage them to do the get as soon as possible. The Beth Din tries to will bend backwards to do it. We've had Beth Dins come in the middle of the night because we were able to get agreement to do, or late at night to do a divorce when it was an emergency, and we were able to get someone to agree. And you never know if they're going to agree to it, how long that agreement's going to stay. If there's still going to be an agreement the next morning, the Beth Din is usually very understanding and will jump on it and get everything together within a few hours if necessary. But you really don't want it to get to that. I know they often complain that the Beth Dins are quick to divorce and slow to convert. But there's a very good reason for that. They're quick to divorce because we live in a society where many people don't. If you don't do the divorce straight away, you're going to lose the opportunity and you're not going to get it. The conversion, you want to make sure that it's a valid conversion. So therefore, they're not in a rush. But it is really important. It's a big mitzvah to do for those that, if the marriage has come to a final end and it's not reconcilable, then it's a big mitzvah to do a divorce. And I do know someone, something that we were involved in years ago, who said, who's one of the spouses wanted to get divorced, and the other one said, I don't want a divorce. I'm not ready yet. I think we can still reconcile it. And essentially what we told him was, right now she wants a divorce. Right now she's filed already for a legal divorce. Do the get. And if you change your mind later, you can always remarry. It's always an option. Not a Cohen. A Cohen is not able to remarry, so we're a little more careful with a Cohen. A Cohen's not allowed to marry a divorcee. But anyone else, you can always remarry. And indeed, this individual did later remarry. He did figure out a couple years later, they got fully divorced. A couple years later, they reconciled, and they did eventually remarry. So you can, and it better do the divorce. And if you ever regret the divorce, unless you're a Cohen, you always have that option to remarry. Yes.
If the people, the parties are in two different states, it's East Coast, West Coast, can you do like a Zoom?
You cannot do it virtually. You must hand the document in person. But what you can do is an agent. You can do the agent that we mentioned earlier, where the agent travels from one place to another. You can ask someone to do it for you as a favor if you don't want to fly. Ideally, the couple should fly and do it themselves. Be easier. It'll cost the same because you got to pay for someone else to fly. But if you can't fly, you can't travel, you can have an agent do it, even if they're in two different places. But you do need, both of them need to come into the Beth Din. There's no way to do it without the Beth Din. I know of Beth Dins when people refuse to come to the Beth Din because they were uncooperative. The Beth Din came to them. And I know of that happening where the Beth Din said, you don't want to come? Can we come to you? Sunday morning, we'll be there at 10 a.m. And the Beth Din with the sofa and everyone showed up at her house.
Also, you can do this.
You can do it anywhere, in theory. As long as it's in a city where has an established way to write the name of the city, in theory, you can do that. But again, if this is in the undesirable situation where one of the parties are not being cooperative. So yeah, you could do it in their home. If you want to show your determination and their lack of cooperation, and they won't show up, then yeah, you could do it. You could do it like that too. But ideally, do the get with both sides cooperative, and the earlier you do it in the divorce, and the earlier you do it, the more likely you are to get cooperation from both sides. Yes, Barry.
Yeah. To address what you were saying about putting down where you're from or whatever. When we got married, I put down for Anita's parents, Chicago and Philadelphia, and the guy at the marriage bureau said, "Was that Chicago, Illinois, or Chicago? There's another Chicago in the United States, and Philadelphia." There's a Philadelphia down south as well as the one in Pennsylvania.
You go right to state. And so there are opinions that you need to also write where the couple are from, where each one lives, and where they were born. That is not widely done, to the best of my knowledge. Today, Gittin are written, we only write the place where the divorce is taking place now, but we don't write where they live or where they were born. Yes?
Do both people have to wait 90 days?
No, just the wife has to wait 90 days.
So the husband can remarry
The next day if
later?
he wants to.
Oh, nice.
Theory. The wife has to wait 90 days. The husband does not have to wait 90 days. Yes. Yes.
Dissolves the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the property finance?
What about the settlement? So I said that earlier. Ideally, the settlement should be done in a Beth Din, because all litigation between two Jews should be done in a Beth Din. However, even if, unfortunately, most Jews don't do it in a Beth Din, they choose not to. Even in violation of the law, even if you do the settlement outside of a Beth Din, you still need to make sure to do the Jewish divorce.
Because I have a niece who just went through a divorce. She's Jewish, her husband is not. And they fought over the money, they fought over custody, visitation, and so forth. So if there's dispute about that, where does that normally get?
Again, ideally, Jewish law says you should go to a Beth Din and resolve it in a Beth Din. In reality, most people don't do that, and they just do it in the civil courts.
So if they did it.
Unfortunately, most Jews, for whatever reason, don't bother litigating their disputes in a Beth Din.
I wondered if there would be a conflict that just said, this is the custody arrangement, and then
So what the Beth Din will do is, because we live in the United States or in California, or in any other state, and divorce proceedings must be certified by a court of law. What the Beth Din will do is they will make both sides sign a binding arbitration agreement. So once you sign a binding arbitration agreement that is approved by the court, then whatever the Beth Din decides is binding, and the court will respect that. And then after you get your ruling from the Beth Din, you take that ruling to the court that then approves it as a binding arbitration. Yes?
I wonder if the reason that a lot of people don't do their settlement through the Beit Din is maybe they don't know they can, because
That's very likely.
It's just horrible.
Many people don't know they can do their settlement in the Beth Din. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Most people don't know that they can and don't bother because nobody ever told them. You're absolutely right. And if they were told, perhaps many people would prefer to go to the Beth Din.
Yeah, I save them a lot of money, a lot of time.
Right. Now, if you do a settlement in the Beth Din, you'd probably want a lawyer or what we call a tohen, an expert in Jewish law, to help you, to advocate for you, which is fine. It might be cheaper though than your lawyer in court. Yes.
Okay, so I know somebody who the guy is not going to won't give her a divorce, a Jewish divorce.
He won't.
I mean, I just know this situation. He told her that he can remarry even if he doesn't get a Jewish divorce.
Can a man remarry without getting a Jewish divorce? With great difficulty. There are some workarounds, but those workarounds would require Beth Dins to be involved and experts to be involved. And if he is intentionally torturing her and not giving her a divorce, they would never give him a workaround to remarry.
Very, very wealthy man. So I believe his money's going to talk.
That I don't know. I can't. It shouldn't. Money should never talk in court. But I don't know. I can't speak for human nature. It shouldn't. Again, generally, you cannot remarry. Both sides cannot remarry without a Jewish divorce. It's also absolutely forbidden in Jewish law to deny your ex a divorce. You're not allowed to hold on to them once you're no longer living together. You're required to give a divorce. And although we cannot physically force you to give a divorce, today in Israel, they'll actually put you in prison if you refuse to do it. In the United States, you don't get that. But here in the U.S., the Beth Din, at least the Jewish community, can put communal rule restrictions on the individual, banning them from coming to shul, banning them from getting called up to the Torah, banning people from inviting them over to their home in the community. Right? They can ostracize them from the community if they choose to do that. I would just say that in most cases, not all, but most cases I know of where there is no divorce, it's either people that are not actively involved in the Jewish community and they never bothered to do it earlier. So there's really no way. In other words, they're not very observant and they don't really care. And, and so you can't get this. And the spouse is not planning to ever remarry and they have a way of, harming their ex. And so that's the most common case. And in the more observant part of the community, what's more common, I think, is when there's debates over settlement. There's debate over the settlement, how to settle, where to settle, and they're still fighting over the settlement. And then they don't want to give the divorce because it's a way of kind of forcing their side of the settlement. That's still indefensible. That's not acceptable. But that's what's usually done. But regardless, Jewish divorce should never be used as a tool against one's ex.
This person never got married in the civil. I only got married in the Jewish law.
Got married under Jewish law, but not under civil law. Okay, that's illegal.
That's what he did.
Okay.
And he's a religious person.
Okay.
Why is it illegal? Yeah.
Is it legal to get married under Jewish law and not to get married under civil law? No, it's illegal.
I've seen this in
Yes.
probably 5 cases.
What? Not illegal. You can get married in Jewish law, you don't have to get married in civil law. Correct?
Yeah.
And I know there's still common law marriage in California. This is why you're not married legally, but you're bound religiously.
As a rabbi who performs marriages, I believe I'm legally required to register every marriage.
I remember when Rabbi Yossi first moved here, and Sarah was already pregnant, and
Mhm.
I remember Rabbi Yossi saying that they had gotten married under Jewish law, but it was months later when they got married, when they had.
Sometimes people don't get around to it. It could be they got married. In other states, you might have to actually go into a court. So till you get around to it, it takes time, but you got to do it. You're required to do it. And certainly the rabbi is going to sign the documents for it. Here in California, you don't just submit a paper. You don't have to even go anywhere. It's really easy, and usually the wedding planner takes care of it for you.
So typically, if you go to the Beit Din, the order of operations would be file civilly. You go to the Beit Din, they would do the get, then they would do the arbitration. That's how they would probably want to run the process.
So if you do arbitration through the Beit Din would want to do the arbitration first to resolve all outstanding things and then do the get at the end. But that's only if you do the arbitration in the Beit Din, because you're going through the Beit Din. In other words, they're not going to finalize the arbitration or anything until you do the get. If, however, as most people do, you're going to settle in court, then I would recommend do the get as soon as possible, because once you've settled in court, getting your ex back to the Beit Din is going to be difficult. Okay, we will be back.